Welcome, movie fans. Thank you for joining us for episode 78 of Reading Between the Reels. If you're a new listener, we're so glad you found us. If you've been enjoying the show, please tell someone about us, send a tweet, post to Facebook, write a review on your favorite podcast catcher, or just recommend the show to a friend. I'm Craig Dickinson, and I'm joined as always by my co-hosts Corey Heitschmidt, Justin Eldon. What's up, fellas? How are we doing tonight?
Doing fantastic.
I tried to have ChatGPT write me a funny opening line, and it wasn't funny. So, yeah. Hello.
Talk on AI. They're supposed to be
all I got.
faithful servants.
Yeah.
I think it said, I'll even read it. Welcome, mutant movie maniacs. I'm like, come on.
Oh, wow.
Come on, AI.
Wow. Well, how's this for a segue? You know what else isn't funny? Our movie for tonight. Logan from 2017 is not funny. There's a few moments of levity, but it is not overall a funny movie.
No, it's not.
So, but it is a good movie. It's a very good movie. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So, Justin, I'm going to start with you, your overall thoughts, because this was your pick.
It was my pick. We were sitting together, and Craig asked me what movie I would like to do for the show. And I had just watched Logan the night before, and I'm like, you know what's a fantastic movie? Logan. So I picked it. And then I've watched it 2 times since that fateful day because I freaking love this movie. It's so good. I'm a huge fan of like the entire X-Men franchise, from the comics to the cartoons to the movies, and this is nothing like any of them. It's completely different than all the other movies, but in a very, very good way, and I just think it's the perfect send-off to the character of Logan and Charles Xavier, and I don't know if I want to say the franchise as a whole because like literally everyone dies off screen, but for those 2 characters particularly, it's fantastic. It's emotional. Like there's several moments where you just kind of want to cry. It's darn close to a perfect movie for me.
All right, Corey.
I have a different take on this movie, Justin.
Oh,
I feel like
good.
you and I have switched from our last episode of Big Trouble in Little China. And this was a movie I did not watch in theaters. At least I don't remember watching this in theaters. And I did not like this movie the first time I saw it. I thought it was a good movie. It was a decent movie. But it was not a movie that I looked at and said, this is what I'm looking for this character. However, after learning all the things I've learned by doing this podcast with you and talking with Craig and with Justin and all the things that we've talked about, from cinematography, music, screenplay, depth of plot, all these things that you've done on here. Craig, this really should be a college course, the things that you bring to light. And we've said it all the time, how many times you blow us away with things that you point out and we're like, wow, I didn't even know that. And so when I went in with those eyes to do a rewatch of this movie made sense to me finally. I didn't get it before. It made sense to me now, and I became a fan of it. And I think here's why. Logan, for me, became a perfect example of answering the question, how do you want a series to end? And that's what I looked at it as. Do you want the series or this main character, this character that you've loved from the show, to just stop making movies and in your mind you feel they've gone off into the sunset? Or do you want them to have one last final stand, one last final destination that they have to face up, that all people have to face? They're not immortal. They can't live forever. They have to face that final destination, that death. And Logan is one of those characters who was immortal. He was forever, and he was the one that is the last of the X-Men standing there. And how do you make that movie? How do you sell that character? And if you like it or you don't like it, this was a finale. This was a great pivotal moment to take this character that we've all loved, because I loved all the other Wolverine movies. And then I saw it in that light. This was his finale. This was his final undoing. The antimanium ended up being his final poison, even though it was his greatest tool. And it made sense this time. It didn't make sense to me before, even though I've been a fan. And so when I looked at it with those type of eyes and understanding the character, the arc, the growth, the story, the director, and all these plots, it made more sense. And then I got behind it. And so now I look and I say, okay, this was a pretty dang good movie. I can't believe I missed up on it before.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna have a hard time following that. That was well said. Um, I saw this movie in the theater, and I enjoy it, but not in the way I do a lot of films. Like my kind of the way I would sum it up is that it's a thrilling gut punch. Like there are moments that I'm like, oh wow, that's awesome, some great comic book action, and there's some just phenomenal acting and some very emotional beats. But it is at several points, it's kind of hard to watch in certain ways because it's so heavy. And thank goodness there are little bits of levity in it, like I mentioned. And Justin, I want to echo what you said too about the fact that it feels very disconnected from a lot of other X-Men media, even just like the more recent movies. And like they were making X-Men movies almost every other year at this point. And so it feels disconnected because of, the setting's very different. Like it's not in a big metropolitan city. It's also far, far in the future. But what I found interesting this time, and I watched it with the subtitles on, is how much of the dialogue and some of the voiceover and stuff puts it squarely in the continuity and kind of pieces those things together. And I think those are probably there just because you don't need them to enjoy the movie. The movie kind of just works on its own, even if you didn't see any of the other films. But if you're into that connectivity, it is there if you're looking for it.
Yeah, I thought they did a great job, like with the continuity, because the X-Men universe as it stands is a little bit of a mess between X-Men First Class, the original 3, and then like Days of Future Past with the time travel and all that stuff. It gets a little wonky. And this one kind of alludes to existing in the same universe as all of those, but it never really like defines a specific, it's this timeline or it's this timeline, because it doesn't really matter. It's not about that. It's about Logan that exists in this universe who was educated by Charles, who was a member of the X-Men. And that's about it. The continuity stuff kind of fades away, which is almost nice for a superhero movie, because I know a lot of people, I mean us included, watch superhero movies with a critical eye and, okay, how well does this align? Did they address this plot point? And this movie just kind of just like, that stuff happened. Right. This is its own story.
Yep.
I was under the assumption that the X-Men Future Past had kind of wiped away and would reset the timeline, and Logan was kind of the end of this timeline, so that you could say this was X-Men Days of Future Past had kind of rewrote X-Men X11, X-Men 2. And so we kind of were on a different, but maybe it's not. In my head, it made more sense, which is why, to explain that Logan had the mutants no more mutants were born, was that somehow a plan had put in place to keep mutants from being born. Like in the movie was it X2 that did that on Alcatraz?
Well, they mentioned in here at the very end, the what's his name? Stryker? No, in this one.
Rice? Dr. Rice?
Yeah, Dr. Rice. Thank you, Craig.
Xander Rice, yeah.
Xander Rice mentions how he had been using food for generations to kind of biologically engineer the mutant gene out of people.
Right. And so in my head, I thought this was a different timeline. Maybe I'm wrong. I might be wrong because I
don't know
that this was a different timeline,
yep, and
overwrote the other one where they were trying to inject mutants with the taking away the mutant powers.
Oh, I see. I mean,
you know what I mean?
And so, in X3 you're talking about.
X3. Yeah.
Yeah, if that movie doesn't make it into the timeline, I'm not sad about it.
But that's a great thing about this, like you mentioned. Like, it doesn't honestly matter. Like, you could wrap your, is it, an offshoot of the rebooted franchise? Is it continuing from the original timeline? Is it continuing from Days of Future Past? It doesn't really matter. It's not, this movie is not concerned with canon at all, which is pretty refreshing.
But it doesn't break any of it at the same time.
Exactly.
I'm sure somebody with a fine-tooth comb could go over it and figure that out, but
yeah.
See, but that's what made me appreciate this movie this time, Justin, was it didn't write canon. It didn't get hung up on this canon thing, and it focused on the end of Logan's arc and the end of his story. And I think that's the part that got me. And this is my fan theory. This is a different type of fan theory because I believe, Craig, your show should be a college class.
Yes, we're 10 minutes in, Corey.
This is not a funny show. This is, like Craig said, it's not a comedy. There were a couple witty lines and stuff, but it's a very heavy finale ending to a loved character, right? And so you get this closure to wrap up his story and his arc and say goodbye, because Hugh Jackman can't do it forever, except for Deadpool 3. And so it's a final chapter to this story that us fans love. And I'm going to just cross over a bit. We never got that with DC characters in the Snyderverse. Cavill and Ben Affleck, we never got a closure to their stories. And I think that's why people get so mad, is they don't get a closure and we just get a reboot and a reset. And it's so hard to just move forward, because I got invested in the character. I was invested in Logan. I was invested in Batfleck. I was invested in Cavill. And I got closure with Logan this time. And I thought, wow, that's a great way to write my guy out of the story and to say goodbye. And I never got goodbye with the other two. And it frustrates me. And I think that's where fans sometimes, we got to learn beyond the stories, all these things that Craig brings in here, composition, color, camera work, music, all these things. And then you start to appreciate little things, because sometimes we don't get that closure that we need.
Well, I think we see that in the MCU too. Kind of a similarly frustrating effect as the DCEU, but not for the same reason. Like the DCEU, you get closure, or I'm sorry, the MCU, you get closure because Captain America ages out, Iron Man dies, but then the MCU just kind of continues, and you're like, wait a second, no, we were done. You leave on a high note, and then, but with Logan, that it has essentially been like the latest movie in the timeline,
right?
And that's been great. That's
and they've even said, Feige's said, I think it's been Feige, but some people working on Deadpool 3 have said that this Deadpool 3 will happen before this. Right?
I kind of assumed.
Right. Yeah, that's the safe assumption because of how far in the future that it's set, that this part will always be the finale of that character's arc. And so even if there's other movies that come after or released after, they're still set before. So.
I do think it's so great as well for Logan that he can, because Hugh Jackman's been playing Logan since the year 2000. This came out in 2017. So for 17 years, he's been playing Logan. Like, he is Logan. Like he is the Wolverine. And just the fact that he can still have a character arc, that he can still have character growth after all that time, in like a very meaningful way too. Like, he is still struggling with so much of the same things he was struggling with previously. Like, there's a few moments in there where you can see that he's almost like trying to process his emotions or process his grief. And sometimes he like leans into it and he's able to process those things, especially towards the end with X-23 or Laura. As he's dying, he's able to like show love for her. But then earlier in the movie, like say when Charles died, after he buries Charles, he's trying to like struggle to be sad and like say some profound words, and he just gives up. He like gives into his rage. He walks off and like wrecks the truck and smashes it with the shovel. So 17 years, and this guy is you still see like that Wolverine rage, that primal rage, and you still see that close-up shot of like him mentally trying to overcome that.
So let's go ahead and dig into cinematography and start to see what things we can kind of pull out to look for deeper meaning in this film. And Justin, I'm going to continue with you. What did you notice? Composition, color, camera work, anything that popped out to you in these most recent viewings?
So I'm going first. I'm gonna take the easy one. I think the bleak, gritty tone of the movie, like, not only does Logan feel tired, but the world feels tired. People feel tired. Like, you can tell there's just kind of like strife going on in the world. There's just like a ton of desert shots and things look dried out. People look dried out. People look tired. It's just like a very harsh. It's a harsh dystopian society almost, but not so dystopian that it feels foreign to the viewers. Like, everything in that movie still very much felt like this is the world I live in maybe 10 years from now. We'll see how well that ages, maybe over a decade or so. But right now, like, it's a pretty stark contrast to most other superhero movies, which are usually a little bit more vibrant.
Oh, okay. I was going to let you finish. Yeah, no, I'm going to jump in real fast and go to Corey, but I did notice that too with the color, that at least at the beginning, it's pretty desaturated, almost like a Snyder film.
That's a good word. Desaturated.
But then I also noticed that when Laura shows up at the water tank, whatever where he's living, I can't really call it his house. Like, it's different. The lighting is much more natural, and the colors feel a lot more natural at that point. Like, it was just this time through, it was kind of shocking because I was like keeping track, like, oh wow, this is really desaturated. I'm going to pay really close attention to that. And then it was like, wait a minute, it's not desaturated anymore. That's interesting.
Doesn't that just kind of like the whole opening sequence, especially when they're at like Logan's living place and the whole fight there? I just want to like take a shower after. I just felt so like dusty and dirty. Like,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in with that composition because I think this movie had a very post-apocalyptic feel to it. Very dusty, very Mad Max kind of. There's still some modern conveniences taking place, but it's a dirty, rough edge where he's at. He's out in the desert. Obviously, he's trying to keep Charles away from populated places because of his seizures. And so you don't actually see what the world looks like that they're living in and what it is. You still get some glimpses where he's driving this he's a chauffeur for this limo. And I'm a little shocked by it because he's got cuts and things bleeding everywhere. And I'm like, my gosh, what kind of limo driver, looks like he just got beat up in a back alley and turns around and taking everybody on these,
Also,
fancy limo rides.
I feel like as a limo driver, you have to be pretty customer service oriented and like
Yes.
pretty friendly and outgoing. And I'm like,
No.
out of all the jobs, why are you like, yeah, I want to be a
that's the
limo
one.
driver.
Like, if anybody's going to be a customer service, it's Logan.
Yeah.
And I
would
feel like it was very
them
muted.
to release a short just explaining how he got that job.
I was
There's
short
a
of
whole
like
set
all
of
his
movies.
other jobs that he had first, right? He was like
Yeah,
working
maybe
fast food,
maybe just like a montage of him like failing at stuff.
So the thing with the limo, I want to jump in composition wise, is I love that the very first shot of the film is just his old face, just a close up on his old face. Like, he just looks tired. And then shortly after that, he gets out of the car and then he gets knocked down severely. He gets shot, by the carjackers. And then while he's lying prone, the film title is superimposed over his body. Like, he's lying down, and then there's the title, which is not a heroic pose, but it's also kind of foreshadowing in a way. Like, the final shot will also be Logan lying in state. So I thought that was fascinating that you just start with that, like him on his back. This is how this movie starts.
Well, and kind of the first introduction we have to him as well is he's clearly not like wanting to start a fight. He gets out of his limo and he's like, listen, guys, you're just going to strip them. They're chrome plated. Like, he doesn't want to fight. He's trying to reason with them. And the world just won't let him. The poor guy. It's just like, I'm tired. I want to take a nap.
A couple other things I really liked this time through. I love that you pointed that out, though. Is when X-24 shows up, the Logan clone. The way that's shot, the lighting being it's super dark, and we don't get to see the full character. The camera just keeps zooming in and more on Charles as he's talking, and we have to assume. And I think the first time I saw it, I didn't quite think that was right because the timing didn't quite work out, that it was Logan that was actually back. But I love how it's literally in the dark and leaving the audience in the dark about what's actually going to happen, and that there's a whole other character there. Thought that was great. And I mean, I have to pull out. I talked a little bit about the final shot of Logan's grave, but also you have to point out, the fact that Laura takes the cross and turns it sideways, and so you have that X at the final shot too, which is pretty fitting.
That's fantastic.
A couple other things that I thought were just really interesting was the dining room scene at the Munsons. The lighting in there is so minimal. It's kind of in the dark. Again, metaphorically, right? They have no idea what's about to happen to them, but it's kind of interesting. Like, it's a dining room. Why are the lights so dark in this house? But again, a lot of foreboding, and also
trying to save money, Craig.
Maybe, but it also, this movie is dark thematically, and so that kind of hits you with that as well. The camera work, though, I wanted to point out that there's a lot of very close, kind of intimate shots, even though this is in a lot of forms, it's kind of an action movie. A lot of stuff is like from the waist or even above. A lot of the interactions there's not a lot of wide shots in this. The fight scenes are so visceral, though, right? And there's a lot of shaky cam in the fight scenes as well. But you just feel it as much as you can feel a visual experience.
I enjoyed. I feel like whenever shaky cam is brought up, people brought up the Bourne movies with what's the guy's name?
Matt Damon.
I wanted to say Jason Derulo, but that's way off. So I feel like anytime someone brings up shaky cam, like the prime example of what not to do are those Bourne movies, and I feel like Logan has like perfected that shaky cam. You can still very much tell what's going on, but you feel like you're in the middle of the fight. And they reduce the frame rate as well, I noticed quite a bit, to make everyone look like they're moving quite a bit faster. And that's a lot of fun, especially with X-23. Like, I don't know how fast that girl is moving, but I can't imagine she's moving that fast in real life because she's like, 12 or something? But she looks very fluid and very quick. And she's just like flipping around those guys and whipping around. And you see like a young ferocity that Wolverine might have had that, we don't really ever get to see him that young except for in, what movie did we see? Oh, it was the Wolverine. I think is when we saw him that young, but we didn't even really like see him do a whole lot there. Like he stabbed one guy. So it's fun to see that, just to see how slow and calm and subdued Wolverine has had to become because of his old age and maybe his temperament, and she's just feral. And there's like moments where she shows that same feralness, and it kind of shows character growth for Logan because she gets frustrated. Like when she sees Charles's dead body in the back of the truck, she just starts like screaming uncontrollably, and he has to calm her down. Like at that point, he's like, "Oh man, I'm the adult in the room. I got to start adulting."
Yeah.
Well, and I think. I will say, as far as the fight scenes and some of that stuff go, the berserker rage that he goes into is pretty amazing. We get to see that Logan scream again, and then just running through bad guys, chopping, swiping, and going, and kind of that. Even has his brother Victor's animalistic lean out and run and jump, kind of like a full sprint. Four-legged animal in the forest when he's chasing after those bad guys. And so I feel like they do a great job kind of giving us one last hurrah of Logan Wolverine rage.
Yeah.
And then it was cool, although if you step back, it's kind of weird. His daughter and him, although I still struggle with the idea that that's his daughter, right? It's just a clone kind of thing. But his daughter and him fighting, and he says, "Get behind me," and then she steps over top of him and jumps
like
and
uses
just
him as a
continues to
springboard.
take out bad guys ahead of him. And I kind of thought, in a sense, that's artistic view of that's what's taking place. She's the leap from behind, leaping forward. Ooh. And he's gone now, so she's the next step to where this story ends for him. Could have been a new arc for her.
Yeah. I want to just continue to build on what you guys are talking about with her fighting, and to speak of it in terms of the camera angles, because that first scene where she's taken on the Reavers inside the building there, the camera is moving so much, and it's amazing because she's so much shorter than they are that the angles become really extreme, like the high angles, because you have to look way down to see her, and then from her perspective, it's way up. They're really, really dramatic shifts in those, just bird's eye. It's really quick. The editing in this film is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And then just one other one that I wanted to point out that I just had never noticed before, which I thought was interesting. We're talking about this character growth, or for Logan, is that from what I could see, there was really, well, the first time, I don't know, there might be other ones, but the first time I see kind of the traditional low angle looking up at Logan, kind of like, yes, this is someone we should be looking up to. He's in good standing. Is right after he stands up to those guys that come. They're, the waters. They have to turn the water on, and then Jackson is the guy who he breaks his shotgun. Right, he comes in there and he just grabs it and snaps it, and then the camera pulls back, and you just have this low angle looking up, like, yes, he is now doing something heroic for somebody else. He's kind of taking his rightful place in this. which I thought was kind of an interesting statement because most of it is just straight at eye level. But there, that one shot was low. It's kind of cool.
I feel like there have been other moments throughout the franchise where Logan has been placed in a place of like someone to look up to. Like several moments, he's kind of the older group at Xavier's school, and a lot of the younger kids look up to him, and he's always kind of like rejected that role of being looked up to, and he always like fails to be looked up to. Like he almost like intentionally pushes it away in the same way that he's pushing it away in this movie. And it's not until the very end, that part where Corey brought up, where he says, "Get behind me," where I feel like, okay, he has finally earned this like mantle of someone to be looked up to. Like he is now protector. Whereas even in X2, when he goes on the little side adventure with Pyro and Iceman and Rogue, he still very much seems like he doesn't know what he's doing. Like he's kind of fumbling through it, and he's not someone to be looked up to yet. But at this point, he is the father figure. He is the mentor to Laura. And I think again, after 17 years, the fact that he can still have some character growth, that's awesome.
Yeah.
When we get to quotes, my quote is going to be connecting that same thought. So don't let me forget that.
Okay. Let's go ahead and talk about the sound now. Sound effects, the soundtrack, which I think is very interesting. Vocal sounds, which I have one thing for that. What do you guys have for that? And either one of you guys can just jump in.
I thought some of his limo driving scenes and things were very dreamlike. There wasn't a whole lot of content and development. It was just like a dream sequence. He's driving, and it quickly changes from one passenger to another type of passenger, as if he's just going through the motions, and days have passed. And I kind of thought that sound of that was very kind of hallucinaric a little bit. Like it's almost as if it's passing through you, and it's just filling until I get to the next part where there's some conversation and he engages in a conversation about Charles or something going on. So I thought those sounds in there were very noticeable to me, that they weren't necessarily super crisp and loud, but very, I don't know, it's very dreamlike is the only way for me to describe that part.
Yeah. Like he's sleepwalking through his job.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a good pull.
Sleepwalking through this regular Joe job and life that he was doing.
Justin.
Every time we get to like sound and music, Craig, I just feel like it's a huge flex for you, and we kind of just sit there looking like idiots. But that's okay. That's okay. I can be humbled every other week. I want to know, with Sound and Folly, what are they doing to making those stabby noises?
Oh yeah, they're like bloody now.
No, really. Do you know? I want to know. What they're doing behind the scenes.
It is disgusting and wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's very fantastic. The fact that they can get all those in there. In terms of, are we on to music yet? Can I talk about music?
Absolutely.
The score. I love Johnny Cash, and so there is not a whole lot of a soundtrack to this movie. Like it uses silence as the soundtrack more so than anything. But the couple notes that you do get every once in a while, it's Johnny Cash's cover of "Hurt" by 9 Inch Nails, and that song, I actually didn't know it was a cover of 9 Inch Nails. I thought it was an original Johnny Cash. So that tells you what I know. But that song is just such a sad song, but it's also just a perfect song for this movie. Like it talks about how, like, you know, he's growing old and he hurts himself just to feel something, and that like he's lived his whole life and all he has at the end is just some empire of dirt, and everyone he's loved has kind of like faded and died. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, that's Logan, that poor man who's been alive since like the early 1800s and has just lived through everyone. Like, it's funny to watch like the urgent care doctor or Charles kind of like mentor him and not talk down to him, but they are like a father figure to him, but he's like double their age at least. Like,
right.
Just poor Logan. He's so, like, yes, his body regenerates. Yes, he can live a long life, but mentally he has just got to be so tired, just living way too long. And I just thought that Johnny Cash song is just so perfect, and the fact that they just pull out a few little notes to kind of remind you of this guy is hurting on the inside. This guy, yeah, he's sick. That adamantium is poisoning him, but like so is his long life. So is his like depression. Poor guy.
Ooh, that's lovely. Okay, I'm gonna flex now. Right? Is it time to flex?
Yep.
Shut up, Craig.
Flex, Craig.
Hey,
Here we go.
if you are listening to this on your podcast app, you can just hit the skip button.
No, this is where you take out the notes and you start scribbling because this is the college course that I was talking about. Go ahead.
Look, this is just such a good. It's just such a good movie. Like I had the thing with the bloody puncture sounds too. I love that so much. And one of the moments, I don't know what this says about me, but the thing that kind of made me chuckle was when Laura's taken down those Reavers off screen when they come in to get her, and then she later comes out with the head. Is that's funny too, right? But there's like echoey screams and gunfire. I love the sound design because you don't get to see it, but you can just picture how much she's just destroying them.
It's the Wampa in the ice cave for Star Wars Episode 5. Like, it's better if you don't see it. Your imagination fills in the blanks.
I love some. They did this once on an early episode of A Person of Interest where Jim Caviezel's character did that. He walked into like a bar or a gun shop or something, and all you heard was him just kicking ass, and then it was like, and he came out, and everybody else is dead. As far as soundtrack goes, the piano, just super stripped down, melancholy piano was like the theme for Logan, like completely opposite of this rousing symphonic scores that we're used to hearing.
So those notes are from Johnny Cash's song "Hurt." Like it's just lifted right from it, as far as I understand.
Oh, that's fantastic. See, I didn't have that. So you're flexing, Justin. Look at that. Because I was like,
I did it. I leveled up.
Yeah, there you go. Because there's Johnny Cash at the end too, right? The man comes around over the end credits.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A couple other things that I really liked was there's a couple of diegetic songs that one is, I think, kind of on the nose, and the other one's very much not. And I remember that it was in one of the early trailers. Like when they go into the convenience store, there's Jim Croce playing. His name's I Got a Name. It's really mellow and just kind of makes you feel good. And it's the scene where, she's going to shoplift unknowingly, and then she's going to like kill that guy. And Logan is like, not okay. Just, I mean, that was one of the early trailers. It was like, this is kind of interesting. You see this little kid walking through the store and hearing Jim Croce, everything's fine. And it's really not.
I love how he just has like zero clue how to parent. I know that you shouldn't kill this guy, but I don't know how to approach that with you.
And then the other one I thought was real. I just put Soundhound on while this was playing. He goes in the bar when he's waiting for the new truck after they have the thing at the casino, and it's called "Find My Way." It's by Grant Lee Phillips. And it's like, if you look at the lyrics, it's literally about like trying to be a better man. Like it's like right there. He's sitting in this
I never caught that.
Yeah, it's right there. So that's kind of fun. But the end battle with X-24, it's got like harmonica and stuff. It sounds like a Western film. Like this is very much leaning into, hey, this is Western influenced. Yeah. Sometimes they hit you over the head with that. Like when they're, again, in the casino watching Shane.
Yeah.
Right. And then
it's very much like, hey, in case you didn't pick up on this detail, we're going to watch a Western in the movie.
We're doing a Western. It's kind of like Shane. See, we're even going to pull from it, which is fine. But this was the thing I thought was cool was after the casino thing happens and they're leaving. And I only got this because I had the subtitles on. There's a newscaster that's talking on the radio, and we'd heard allusions to Westchester and what had happened with Charles, but we'd only get the actual details in the newscast because it says, of course, Westchester's where the X-Mansion is. It says it was a little over a year ago where 7 mutants and several X-Men were killed. Like, I would like that information. Thank you. But it comes in such an interesting package. It's kind of, a way you can kind of slip it in where, again, it doesn't, like we said earlier, it doesn't really, the details don't matter for the story itself. We just need to know that something happened that was bad.
Yeah.
I
do like
I wanted to know.
They breeze right over it, but they at least say, yes, this is what happened to the characters you loved.
Well, and then Charles admits that, right?
Yeah, it's so sad. He like finally remembers. He's like, I killed my students. Yeah. It's
right before he
sad.
dies, he it all kind of comes back, right, in the Munson's house.
Yeah.
So as a fan and as a nerd, like I wanted to know the actual details of that, and so it's nice to kind of get that. But you, as a casual fan, you don't need it, and you won't find it if you're not watching. I mean, clearly, if I'm watching it with the subtitles on, I'm a little bit more intently watching than.
Yeah.
But yes, let's talk about performance. Corey, you had something that you wanted to say about dialogue.
Well, and I think it kind of really summed up Logan, his attitude. This whole movie was kind of he's in the death throes and he knows it. He admits it. He's embracing it. He's the last of the X-Men. And I think his quote was, "Nature made me a freak, man made me a weapon, and God made it last too long." And I thought that was a powerful quote because it was kind of he's ready to go, but he's also this epic character who needs to go out with something, with a purpose. He can't just fade off and die off in old age and fade out, it's sick. He's going to make his stand and make his Wolverine last minute ditch effort to stand up and do who he is. And that involved his berserker rage, but then also standing up for the kids, which is my next quote that I'll get to, but I'll let you guys go next.
Justin, did you have a quote that you wanted to share?
I do have a quote because I thought it was such it was just a solid line from Laura to kind of take a jab at Logan. It was after it was at night, they were up on that mountain right before the final battle. She's there with all the kids. And he's trying to convince her that he can't help her any longer. And he's kind of down in the dumps, I think, because Charles just died. Down in the dumps is probably too nice of a term for what he's feeling. He's depressed. But he's very adamant. Hey, adamantium.
Look what you just did.
Wow. Okay. He's very adamant, and he says, "It is better this way because I suck at this. Bad shit happens to people I care about." Yeah. And then Laura responds, "Then I'll be fine." And I'm just ooh.
So glad you wrote that down.
That hurts. That hurts. Yikes. And then the other dialogue that I really like, and it's just kind of a whole scene, so I'm not going to quote it, but right after he gets out of the urgent care and they're sitting in the car, and he first finds out that she can speak, and they're kind of arguing with each other, and just how adamant. There's that word again.
Yes.
She is about no, you are going to take us here. We paid you. You're gonna do what I want. I love how he fights, and he's like, no, and then eventually he's like, fine, and he just drives away and goes. He's just such an old tired man. He's like, I'm not gonna argue with you. Yeah. I love it. It's fantastic. And then I think at some point she punches him right in the face.
She does.
He's like, don't hit me.
Yes,
I love that. She's a fantastic actress. She's not. I was looking at her IMDb page, and she's not in a whole lot, but she does a great job.
Yeah, I hope she's in Deadpool 3. That would be That would be wonderful.
That would be pretty good. She's older now, though.
Yeah, she's 18. I looked it up.
Oh, yeah. I assumed. I guess she would have been older than that, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, Millie Bobby Brown was up for that role as well.
Ooh, I could see that.
11,
that makes a lot. Yeah,
mm-hmm. It actually does. First thing I'm going to say is there's a lot of F-bombs in this movie, which at first was a little bit jarring because I'd seen Wolverine so many different times in other movies and not heard him drop F-bombs. Charles dropped some F-bombs.
No, Logan drops one F-bomb.
Oh, it was only one?
In Days of Future Past.
Oh,
wait,
okay.
Or is it that one? Yeah, I get kind of those ones.
Oh no! Oh yeah, First Class.
First Class, yeah. They approach him in the bar, and he's like,
in the bar. That's pretty good. Yeah. Okay, but the quote I'm going to say, I'm not going to drop the F-bomb, but I'll get close to it. It's where they're driving before they meet the Munsons, and they're on the freeway, and there's all those auto trucks, and he says, "Mother frickin' auto trucks," and then Charles says, "Language, Logan, and you're screaming at a machine." He says, "Oh, what? So she can gut a man with her feet? She can't hear a few naughty words, huh?" And he says, "She can learn to be better." You mean better than me? Actually, yes.
Oh.
Yeah. I just love that exchange. It was just kind of funny. Again, it's a little bit of levity, but also at the end there is a little bit of like, you have to be an example to her because she does not have to be, which is my last quote too, which I'll get to. Like, you don't have to be what you were supposedly created for.
Yep.
You get to choose. So,
all right.
I like Charles just in general in this because he seems to be very aware that, like he even says it right at the beginning. He's like, "What a disappointment you are," which is kind of a harsh line, but he's aware. He's like, "You have made this choice," but kind of once he is a little bit more clear-headed, like some of the meds wear off. I think he's a lot more straightforward with Logan and a lot more like to himself. He is Charles Xavier once again, or Professor Xavier. And up until the moment that he dies, he is still trying to like teach Logan lessons. Like right before he goes to sleep on his final night, he says that thing about like, this is what it feels like. You should take some time and appreciate what's going on here. Like he's a teacher at heart. He's still doing it. Like, as he says, chemically castrated, and he's still going for it.
Go ahead, Corey.
Okay, so I'm going to go with this next one here, and I think this summarizes kind of Logan for me. This is the end of the character, the final chapter that I saw. And this quote's going all the way back to X-Men Wolverine Origins. X-Men. What was the title of that?
X-Men Origins Wolverine.
X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Those titles get so
It's an awful title, yeah.
And right after he got shot with the adamantium bullet that gave him amnesia, Gambit comes up to him, saves him, right? And Gambit comes up to him and says the very first words out of his mouth, "You're safe now. Come on, we have to go. Come on, let's go. The kids are safe." That's the first words that he hears from his "I have amnesia and I don't remember anything." And then you fast forward, here we are all these years later. He dies on that tree, and the whole point was the kids are safe. And so I felt like, to me, this is where I embraced the story and said, okay, this was a good movie and an end to the character, because I saw this as the kids are safe was the beginning of his new memories.
Yep.
And the kids are safe, which is the end of his chapter and his stories. And I thought, oh, what a great, powerful way to book in it. I don't know if that's an intentional thing, but it's something that me as a fan, I draw out of. And the only reason I know that is because Origins was on a couple nights before I watched this. And I was just watching this little final fight between him and Ryan Reynolds and Victor, where they were fighting on top of that nuke tower. And I watched that, and that line came to me, and I said, oh my gosh, that's the kids are safe. So if you wake up and someone says to you, hey, the kids are safe, it's okay, we got to go, you're thinking to yourself, I saved kids.
Yep.
And so his whole arc and everything after that has been, I save kids. I do what's right. Even though it's messy and I do it, like, they're not going to like what you've done to this place. That was the other comment he said. And that's kind of been Wolverine the whole time. Nobody's going to like what you've done to this place, but in the end, you save kids. And so that's a powerful character arc.
Yeah. I need to watch X-Men Origins Wolverine again.
Just that part, and you'll see. And if you think of it in terms,
and the Wolverine, but I need to watch them all again.
You do. But if you watch that movie
better, Corey,
and you hear that Gambit line, you think to yourself, now think of his ending. The kids are safe. Cool. You can die and be done.
Nice.
So speaking of Logan's ending here, this is not an original idea by me. This is from the internet. I want to know your guys' thoughts. I remember this being like a big deal when the movie came out. So in 2013, when the Wolverine came out, which I don't think was reviewed very well, but I liked it. That's the
I liked it too in Japan.
In Japan, and he goes through that whole thing. So Yukio can like basically see when people are going to die. Like that's her power. So she says to Logan, and I pulled up the quote here. It's not like I get because she sees how Logan's going to die. It's not like I get a complete picture, more like looking through a keyhole, but I'm always right. All I can see is one part of a person's life, their death. And I saw yours. I see you on your back. There's blood everywhere. You're holding your own heart in your hand. So at the end of the Wolverine, that is true. He is lying there because they took his heart out to like take his healing powers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I think everyone just assumed that's his death. That's what Yukio saw. But in this movie, he's lying on his back. There's blood everywhere. Yep. And he's holding his heart in his hand.
Yes,
so people have interpreted that to like his daughter.
Yes,
His
metaphorical.
daughter is his heart, and that's how he dies.
Love it.
Was that intentional, or is that just a happy coincidence?
Well, James Mangold directed both movies, and so he would have been the one. He would be the one to ask. So we should get him on the show.
We should
James
get him on the
Mangold,
show.
if you're
What's he
listening.
doing?
But I'm asking you guys. Do you think it was intentional?
I think it's an. I think it's a Joe incidence with a C.
Gotcha.
Joe incidents.
I do, but I like the meta. But it works.
Yeah,
because as soon as you started saying that, my heart, I was like, he's holding his daughter. I'm good.
Yep. I thought that was
which
nice.
leads into my last quote too, because he has, it's a long thing, so I'll just cut it out. But he says, and I alluded to this earlier. He says, "Listen, you don't have to fight anymore. Don't be what they made you." And then like you're dead inside if the next part doesn't get you a little bit, where she says, "Daddy."
Oh.
And then he says, "So this is what it feels like," which alludes back to your earlier point, guys, about what Charles says. Like, you got to embrace what's happening here. Feel what this is. Yeah, that's, he finally learns that he's nothing left to learn at that point, right? He's ready to go.
So I had a question about that part too. I have it even in my notes. I was going to ask about that. So when he says, "This is what what does it say? This is what
it feels like.
It's what it feels like.
Yep. Is he talking about death, or is he talking about like having someone he cares about?
Second one. That's what I got.
The second one.
Family, loving someone. Yeah. Belonging to somebody.
I thought it was the first, but now I think it's the second. I'm going to go with both.
Well, because the quote from Charles is very similar. And so I think that, especially since it's in the same movie, he's referring back to, although he wasn't in that scene. So that's interesting, because that was X-24. But it does kind of echo Charles's. He'd said it.
It was Logan when Charles said, like, you should take a moment to feel this.
Oh, okay.
It was
good.
Logan.
So then,
because when X-24 is there, Logan is lamenting about, Charles is lamenting about what he did to the X-Men.
Right. That's like when he puts him to bed and then let me go to get my dad settled. It's that part. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good. All right.
Ooh, I just got the chills. That's beautiful.
So good. It's a good movie. Body language, facial expressions, costumes, hair, makeup. What do we notice for that? Anything that we haven't covered that we need to make sure we do?
Makeup. With the amount of close-up shots on Logan's face, like it's hard to believe that Hugh Jackman is not like a tired-looking old man with scars all over his body.
Gosh,
he looked great. I mean, he looked awful, but like they did a good job making him look awful.
Yes, agreed.
Did he limp any worse? He limped the whole movie. God,
yeah, so good.
He had like an old man walk.
Oh,
yeah,
everything.
It was sad watching him walk sometimes.
Yeah. Well, the makeup on Xavier too, because he's in his 90s, and it's subtle because he's just got like liver spots and stuff, and he's a little bit more wrinkly, and like Patrick Stewart's kind of just always looked old. Yeah, But like if you're watching it, at least if you're watching it in high def or 4K or whatever, you can start to see it. It's subtle, but they have made him look older than he does, because I mean we've seen him now like a few years later, like in Picard season 3 or whatever, like. He's older, like 7 years older than that, but doesn't quite look as old as he does here. So,
yeah, he does a good job of playing like an old senile man too.
A nonagenarian, actually.
Yeah.
Love that line. One thing I noticed in this time, for some reason, I've seen this movie multiple times. He actually does get to use his powers in a helpful way in this one. Like you see him calm the horses down, where he's really, concentrating. He closes his eyes. And it's a moment we'd seen countless other times in the earlier X-Men movies, but I thought that was kind of cool. I think it's the one time where he's like legitimately in control of his power.
Yeah.
Old Jedi mind trick.
Yeah. Let's see. We talked about a lot of this stuff. I thought really interesting. Pierce's neck tattoo. I got a really good look at it this time.
It's a skull with two swords, wasn't it?
It is.
At first I thought it was Hydra.
Yeah, it's the skull and crossbones. So, like, dude's a pirate.
Yeah.
A little bit on the nose, but kind of cool.
This is unrelated.
Hook arm.
Yeah,
this is a little unrelated, but
that's a good one too, Corey.
I'm a little irritated. So when they're in the casino, and Charles is having the seizure, and Logan's walking around stabbing people in the face,
Yes.
Why would their bodies still be standing after he stabs them?
So you have that great moment when it stops and they all fall.
Yeah, but if he puts 3 claws through their brain, like Charles is not telekinetic, he's only telepathic. He can't hold things up with his mind. So why wouldn't those bodies immediately drop to the floor when they're dead?
I got the feeling that it was the vibration that he was giving off that was just kind of holding everything in place.
But I don't know if he's actually giving a vibration. I think like
That's
it's not vibrating the room, it's vibrating the people because he's messing with their brains.
And see, I took it as it was vibrating the entire hotel.
He doesn't have that power. He's not telekinetic. I don't know.
Well,
Okay. All right.
No, I hear what you're saying.
I'll let it go.
I mean, visually you get that great like relief. Of wherever it falls. But yes, logistically, that's a great question. I would.
It was a cool scene, but then you think about it,
especially Wolverine has to use his claws to walk down the hallway.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'd love to hear if a listener knows more about that. I'd love to hear.
Oh, I read that. Oh, you mean specifically why they didn't just drop?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I did read though that scene where he's walking down the hallway, the crew tied a rope to his waist and was actively pulling Hugh Jackman back in that scene to make it look like he was struggling to walk. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wanted to point out too, X-24 looks a lot like Sabretooth from X-Men Origins, like the way he's
that had to be intentional too,
right? His haircut and his clothing is. Oh no, totally. It was very reminiscent of that character.
I think in that
of Liev Schreiber, yeah.
X-24 was very much more feral, more animalistic, kind of subservient to whoever his master was, because then when he sees that guy dead, he goes into a berserker rage. And I think if you think about it, before Logan got shot in the head with the adamantium bullet and then kind of became who he was, he had to become a new person. That's kind of who Logan would have been, is very feral, very angry, very soldier, doing whatever his master told him. So I feel like X-24 was kind of a, if someone could have saved him, he could have become another Logan, but we'll never know.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of nature versus nurture.
But why doesn't he survive the bullet that Logan does? That's the one part that threw me. Like when she shot him, like half his head's gone. And I was like, oh, that's it.
Yeah, I think that's more of an issue with X-Men Origins Wolverine than it is with this movie.
Okay.
Well, and I don't know if it's ever established that adamantium would negate the healing process either.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to...
Well, and he didn't heal the same, did he? Because they had to give him the green stuff.
Well, that just made him heal faster because he was pretty messed up.
That's true.
So in the comics, he still has bones. They're just bones plated with adamantium. And I'm assuming it's the same thing in the movie. So let's say the adamantium bullet takes apart his skull. The adamantium skull, his bone skull should grow back in its place.
Yeah.
But I don't understand why his brain tissue wouldn't grow back, because he's been stabbed through the eye multiple times and that's always grown back. I think we're probably thinking too much about this, but hey, it's what we do.
Yes, that's kind of the whole idea. Anything else for performance before we move on? I think we talked a lot about it. I mean, I had the feral thing multiple times with Laura. She got those big wide eyes and setting design. What I thought was just kind of interesting is that most of it was filmed in either Louisiana or Mississippi or New Mexico, which stands in for Old Mexico.
Oh,
yeah.
I thought it was kind of a good take to kind of show it's all desert, it's all forest, it's all hidden away from big cities. Kind of a nice way to. You could post-apocalyptic, or you could say it's just years later and they're on the run, hiding in low populated areas.
Yeah, I had something along those lines too. It helps it make it more, a more personal film, because you're not going to see whole teams of superheroes out in the bayou or whatnot. It's like this is not where superhero movies happen. So that also kind of separates that. And then we talked about it's a Western. That's why it happens in the desert. It kind of looks like a Western. Visually, it's giving you those cues as well.
As far as props, can I just say one thing about the fence that Logan tries to drive through with the limo?
Such a great scene.
It's just not the first movie that I ever saw where someone tried to drive through a fence and it didn't just shatter or blow apart and they drove through it. it's like all of a sudden the fence became this like aircraft carrier cable that stopped an F-15 landing on the deck or something. I mean, it's like he stops and he's dragging this whole chain link fence. It's like, what was that stuff made out of? Animanium or what? Because that was whatever that fence would not let them through it.
Yeah, that was pretty cool though. Didn't it? Like you took out some dudes with that thing.
Yeah, I did.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That did make some great scenes. I just was curious because every other movie I've ever seen, that fence just
that was kind of surprising.
Blows
that
apart.
it lends to the. I mean, it's heightened realism, but realism, I guess. One thing that I want to go down the rabbit hole a little bit, the Liberty Motor Hotel, where he picks up Gabriella and Laura, or he's supposed to. That sign has several letters missing from the word Liberty.
Oh,
which I thought was it's like their freedom is very tenuous, just kind of hanging on. So, I mean, there's multiple shots of that sign, so I'm gonna think that's pretty intentional. That's the way I read it. Other props, like how great is it that there's X-Men comic books in this movie?
I was just gonna bring that up. I literally wrote it down to bring it up.
Talk about it, Justin.
I was just wondering. I go back and forth on how I feel about that because it kind of breaks the fourth wall a little bit, but on the other hand, it doesn't. Like he draws attention to the fact that most of it's made up. I don't think I like that. I don't think I like that there are comic books in there. I think they could have alluded to the glory days of the X-Men. Well, I mean, they did. They did allude to the glory days of the X-Men multiple times. The main antagonist several times says like, "Oh, I'm a fan of yours," or "Oh, I finally got to meet Wolverine." Like he's kind of fanboying, and I like it. And I don't like that they had the comics in there. I appreciate that they tried, but I could have done without.
Yeah, I noticed there's a kid at the end that has like a 12-inch Wolverine action figure, like with the full suit too.
Yes.
Wait, I missed
He
that.
walked away holding it.
Yeah, the short little the black kid, that kind of heavyset one.
Oh,
yeah, I had to go rewind. It's like, is that what I think? Yeah,
Yep.
it was.
That's cool.
I feel like it's kind of a neat way because all these movies, you always have these superheroes kind of saving everything. It's why wouldn't we end up building? It's kind of like the Boys TV show where they're public figures and they're going to have their own movies. They're going to have their own toy lines. Or
I miss the Boys,
but that just wasn't ever the X-Men. Is my issue is like the X-Men was always like a stand-in for. Well, I mean, it's represented different things over time, but it's always been a stand-in for like the civil rights movement.
Yeah, they weren't super public in their films either, right? Not like
but
the Avengers
they were hated. Like mutants were never loved.
That too.
And
that's a good point.
That they've made comics out of them where people like now idolize them.
Yeah,
it was a decision.
Sure. Well, it's also to kind of talk about another like in the Watchmen universe. They're real life superheroes, and so their comics are pirate comics. They don't have, and that's the whole logic behind it. So since there's superheroes in real life, we wouldn't have superhero comics. So there's obviously multiple ways of looking at that.
Yeah,
I'm gonna do that movie at some point.
Yeah, it doesn't ruin the film for me. I wasn't a fan.
I remember some of that was in the trailer too. So it was like, that's interesting. Any characters we haven't talked about that we need to?
I feel like we would be amiss if we did not mention what's his face, Caliban.
Yes, thank you.
Beware the light. That's a great line to go out on.
Oh yeah,
drops the grenades.
Pretty cool.
He was a troubled character, but I like him. They say he was IQ when the guy looks at him and says, "Save this one." Parts of this one is IQ is great, and I thought, I don't know, they alluded to it, but they didn't show it as well.
That creeped me out when he said that.
Yeah,
a lot. Just like that's all that guy he's just looking at a product. And that was just so. That's Richard E. Grant as Xander Rice, who's great in everything.
Yes,
yeah. I believe it's a different actor, but Caliban's also in a small scene in X-Men Apocalypse.
Yes, they were like a year apart. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
he was there
kept
for a
showing
moment.
Up. Mm-hmm.
But no, I thought he did a great job. That scene where he's kind of being interrogated, and they take the tarp away, and his
Oh,
face is burning.
Brutal.
And you just see like the spit coming from his mouth.
mhm.
He
Oof.
looks like he's in a massive amount of pain. That's a rough scene to watch sometimes.
Yeah, that's Stephen Merchant, one of the co-creators of the British Office, the original Office.
Oh,
Oh.
yes.
Yeah,
Now that you say that, I see it.
he's been in a lot of stuff too. He was in what's the movie? Jojo Rabbit. He was in that too.
Yeah. Mhm.
He's very, very tall, so it's pretty easy to figure out. But yeah, it's relatively small cast, honestly. It was interesting seeing Eric LaSalle. I was a big ER fan back in the day, so seeing him as Will Munson, the father of that family. It's kind of- yeah. It's
I
like,
only watched ER when I stayed home sick from school.
Wow,
That's my only connection to that.
we are not the same age.
We are.
Yeah, Boyd Holbrook was the one who played Donald Pierce. He, of course, is in the latest Indiana Jones movie as well. I think he's much better in this film. Like, I just want to punch that guy in the face so much in this film. And I love what you said, Corey, earlier about like him being a fanboy. Like, that gives his character some, it's dynamic. Like, he's got different layers to him.
Yes.
Yeah, and he kind of strikes you as a guy right at the beginning when he walks in, or when he sits down in like Logan's limo.
Yeah.
It's almost like Logan had an opportunity to be a nice guy about this and kind of like maybe even have not an ally, but definitely not an enemy.
Yeah.
And Logan just is not having it. He's like, get out. Get out of my
Fitting for who he is.
Well, I should have wrote it down, but he has that, Pierce has that great line about, they thought it was either a tiger or Freddy Krueger, and it couldn't be that because the
one's extinct.
the other fictional.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What a great line.
That is a great line.
And like, I kind of like this guy, and he's got the southern drawl and whatnot, but he's horrible. I also want him to die.
Yeah.
And of course he does. Hero's journey.
Laura is the new hero. Logan is the mentor. Wouldn't you think so?
I'm going to disagree with that.
Like, if she ended up having her own show, Logan would have been the death of the mentor.
Justin, I want to hear what you have to say.
So I think Charles is the death of the mentor.
Oh, there it is.
And Logan would be the hero. Because Laura never rejects the call. Right? She's on it from the beginning. Logan rejects the call up until the end there.
Yes.
I'm going to say
not rejects, but he is hesitant with the call.
Oh, it doesn't have to be one or the other, guys.
No, it does.
Because part of the hero's journey is that the hero completes their own journey to become a hero and ultimately becomes the mentor for the next generation. And so I think it is both. That yes, you do have his mentor. You have Logan's mentor dies, where it enables him. He has to be able the one to make those decisions. Where he does at the end, right? Where he has to decide, you know what, I'm gonna die if I take this serum, and go try and save these kids. But it's the thing I have to do. He finally makes the right choice. And then the thing with Laura, like, she does have to decide. We haven't really seen it yet, but we have to see. Her journey is just beginning. Her call is to, like I said that earlier line, like to be more than what they made her to be. She has to decide if she's just going to be a killing machine or if she's going to try and be a benefit to society.
Well, and her journey starts with, it's kind of the torch is passed when they go into battle together, and she jumps off him. And they have this wonderful battle together. She's fearless going against X-24 in there with him, which kills Logan, but she ends up, that's the end of it. So I guess, I mean, her rising to the call would be her own tale afterwards.
I was trying to introduce some conflict into this, which
you did. It was great
podcast. And Craig's like, nah, let's compromise. Everyone loves compromise, Craig.
But it's
I'm just kidding.
It's
you're
the
totally
end
right.
of Logan's journey for sure, which is like what Corey said earlier. Like, we wanted to see that. Like, it is the most. It's satisfying in a way because, like, what else does he need to do? Like, yes, it's going to be fun watching him banter back and forth with Ryan Reynolds, but it also is a fulfilling end to that character.
Mm-hmm. There's layers to it.
Mm-hmm.
Layers,
which is a natural lead into talking about world building. Did you guys have anything else that you wanted to add just about the greater X-Men universe, movies or otherwise?
I don't know that it. I mean, obviously, correct me if I'm wrong. It almost feels like it narrows the world of the X-Men. It doesn't build it, like it's already pretty well established. It exists within our world, and then by taking out a lot of the mutants, it brings it back to reality, and it makes the movie more grounded. Like these superhero fantastical things don't exist anymore. So in the terms of like a superhero movie, it pulls back on the world building, but in like a post-apocalyptic dystopian sense, it does kind of build that. But I dig it. I thought it was great. I like that it did that. I like that it didn't spend too much time world building because it's more character focused.
Yeah, I had just a couple of things I think that you guys really already talked about. I mean, I had the thing about the adamantium, excuse me, the adamantium that was, his greatest strength is now the thing that's killing him. I love that you brought that up earlier, Corey.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the fallout from some of those other films that like the debt always comes due, as Mordo would say. Right? Yeah. So final thoughts on Logan, Justin.
Oh, I'm going. I mean, kind of just what I said at the get go.
Yeah.
I freaking love this movie. This is one of the movies that I can watch over and over and over again. I think the first time I watched it, my wife and kids were out of town, and I was living in an apartment, and I had like a couple days to myself, and I remember like blacking out all the windows with blankets, and I'm like, I'm gonna enjoy this movie. And I did. It was so good, and I still get the feels every single time. Like if you can watch this without crying and without just like feeling a sense of love for the character of Logan, you're heartless. Like you're not human. It's as close to a flawless movie as you can possibly get.
Corey.
Well, I would say I think I will respect that, and I would say that I think this is a great movie. I did not like it when it first came out. I'd echo that again. But then I think when you start to delve into the character of who Logan is, at least in my mind, through his all his movies, the X-Men movies, the arc that Hugh Jackman has played with this character, I think it makes sense. And when it makes sense, when you take all of the character aspects from multiple movies in, it makes this final piece just the checkmate of a movie for a character. Just this is the last dance and I'm done. With the asterisk of Deadpool 3 coming out. But that'll be a different universe or something. Ryan Reynolds will throw an explanation in there. But it's the same thing. He walked off, and rather than going into the sunset, he took a perfect death for a character, which is great. And I love it, and I'm here for it. I don't know that this is the kind of movie that I would watch over and over again, but it's definitely the kind of movie that I look at and say, that was a good movie, and I respect it.
I feel like with how much bashing I did on last week's movie, we need to have a movie that you're more passionately against, because you're just kind of like,
I'm too nice about it.
It was pretty good. Yeah, you're too nice about it. We need a movie that you absolutely
It's too good of a movie for me to do that against. I could see where you took that with Big Trouble in Little China. You can't take that same stance with Logan.
Being so freaking agreeable there, Corey.
Oh, I got a few movies I could throw that to.
All right, let's do those sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to go too far off of the Deadpool 3 thing. I wanted to make sure I asked both of you guys, how do you feel about Logan coming back for Deadpool 3? Are you okay with it?
Oh, I absolutely am in there for it. And I think that is the best thing. I think him and Ryan Reynolds have a chemistry you can't possibly fake that chemistry with anyone else. And you can't build that. I mean, that's a rare come along in a decade type of chemistry. And the fact that he got it back and set this all up in Deadpool 2, the outtakes at the credit scenes, it's just cleaning up the timelines. I mean, that is fantastic. And the fact that they're doing it, I think it's incredible. And I think it's going to break the internet when it finally comes out.
Justin, how do you feel about it?
I'm okay with it. I'm very happy with the send off that Logan currently has. I think that's great. But in no way would this break any sort of continuity, because you can assume it happens in the past, especially because in the comics shown in Logan, he's wearing the yellow suit.
Right.
And we never see him wear the yellow suit. So maybe Deadpool is what's going on in the comics. I don't know. Or during that time period. So it doesn't break continuity, but I also worry it's going to maybe make light of Logan and the way he dies. Deadpool 2 already kind of did make light of it, which is fine. Do what you want. But I like this movie. Don't ruin it for me.
But that's the part of breaking the fourth wall. That Deadpool has liberty to do that.
I suppose.
Yeah. And we've already established multiple times, I think, that this film, Logan, kind of sits on its own no matter what. So you could always say, well, this is a different timeline. And especially as much as Marvel has now gotten into all of the, the multiverse and whatnot, like this one exists and cannot be messed with. So,
oh yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm very excited for Deadpool. As a man who has a wall in his classroom devoted to Ryan Reynolds,
yes.
Yeah, I'll definitely see the movie.
Just a wall, just one. I get it.
I mean,
it's Ryan Reynolds.
I might have a photoshopped image of my head on top of Blake Lively's head.
Yeah,
being married to Ryan, like that might exist in my classroom. I don't know.
Somewhere there might be T-shirts made with Ryan Reynolds middle school
cardboard cutout, maybe.
Yes, thanks. Okay,
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to point out too is, did you guys know that there is a Logan Noir black and white version of this film?
No,
I did not know, and I've never understood the appeal of that sort of movie.
I have not watched it, but I watched this version. I had multiple versions. I had watched on Movies Anywhere, and it's one of the extras. Which, little plug for Movies Anywhere. So, like, if you'd like to sponsor us, always watch your digital movies on Movies Anywhere because they frequently have the alternate versions of things. Like we talked about this with Watchmen. Like that's where the ultimate cut is. I bought the regular version, and the ultimate cut is only on there.
Is this an ad spot, Craig? Are you?
Apparently, it is.
Are you pitching Movies Anywhere?
Hey, I would love to be sponsored by Movies Anywhere.
Okay, you need to share some of that sweet sponsorship dough with us, because
I will gladly split whatever comes in. At this point, it's zero.
What's half of zero?
I also, though, I go just to wrap up on Logan. I think it's also, like I said earlier, it's not a fun movie for me. Like I had kind of a hard time finishing this off because it was just so depressing, but it was good, and so I don't want to watch it frequently, but I do enjoy watching it. I think if I'm not watching it super closely, I can just kind of sit back. I'll probably enjoy it a little bit more. This was a little bit of a slog just because I wanted to rewatch certain parts instead of just kind of let it wash over me. So that'll be my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, you just gotta one-up us on the music. Like I gotta maintain my title. I gotta
flex. I gotta flex. So as we close, we just want to say thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on Twitter and Facebook. Email us at readingbetweenreels@gmail.com or use the SpeakPipe app on our website. If you enjoyed the show, please tell a friend. Support us by writing a review on your favorite podcast catcher. Our next episode will be a celebration of Reading Between the Reels' 3rd anniversary. It's been 3 years already. And a review of Blade Runner.
Woo.
With special returning. We have a returning guest, Dan Zare from Coffee with Kenobi, will be joining us to break that bad boy down. He's never seen it before now. And Corey has never seen that movie before now.
I saw it. I just slept through part of it, most of it.
Okay, so this is where we're gonna have beef, Corey. This is the episode
where we're gonna have.
This
is the one.
Is this the new Blade Runner or the old Blade Runner? Which one am I watching?
It's the final cut. We're going to be focusing on the final cut version of the film from 2007. So,
all right.
If you have access to that one, guys, watch that one. Send us an email or voicemail about your favorite moments from Blade Runner or anything about the show, and share it on the next episode.